Hey friends, Mindy here. I have a process video for you today. I'm going to be doing my setup for my journal for Twisted Scripture, and my idea for this month was to actually create a travel or a field guide. Since we're looking at and examining some scriptures that are kind of taken out of context, I thought it would be fun to do a field guide. So I have this paper, it is called Kraft-Tex, and this was sent to me by Shannon, and it's going to be the perfect thing for what I need. It's marketed as a paper fabric, and it's very pliable. You can put it in the washing machine and dry it, and it gets like this leathery feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crunch this paper up a bunch of different ways. I'm trying to kind of break apart the fibers just a little bit and just make it really soft. I want it to get that leathery feel. And so I have never used this before. I've seen it around for years and just never taken a leap with it. So I'm super excited to have some of it. So thank you, Shannon. Anyway, so you can see I'm crunching this up, just squishing it kind of like you would just do any kind of paper. And then I'm going to soak that in some coffee. So I soaked it in some hot coffee for about 10 minutes, and you can see how it just kind of soaked up where in those creases, and it just is, I wish you could feel it because it's so awesome. So I'm going to kind of cut this down so that it's about the size of my traveler's notebooks. I'm actually going to deconstruct those traveler's notebooks that I got with my kit, and I'm going to use those and kind of recreate a journal that I can use as a field guide for these scriptures that we're going to be studying. So I'm just trimming this down to the size of the traveler's notebook here, which is about 8¼ inches tall. And I'm going to do a little bit of experimenting with this strip that's left over just to see how it's going to take ink and different things. So I'm starting out with ground espresso and archival ink just to kind of see how that looks and how the ink is going to work on there. It's not quite the right color though that I want. So I'm going to try a few other different things here. So I left this part in so you could kind of see what I was doing. So I started off with the archival ink in ground espresso, and I'm just rubbing it all over the top. I like how this worked, but I didn't really like the color, and I went ahead and did both sides of this Kraft-Tex because they have different textures. So the next thing I'm going in with is some Distress Stain in the little dauber. And I really like, as this is kind of sitting here, I like how it's looking, but when it dries, I like the look of it, and but in the end I decided to go with something permanent, but you can kind of see. So I did this again on both sides because one side is a little bit more textured than the other of this Kraft-Tex. So I'm definitely going to be getting some more of this and doing some more experimenting with it because I feel like there's so many things that you can do with it, because like I said, you can wash it, you can dry it, you can sew it with a sewing machine, people make bags and all kinds of things out of it. So I wanted to use some distress inks here, and I'm just kind of show you that you can still get those kind of techniques on here as well. It lifted right up off of there, really, really nice. So I'm just going to spray this other side too and see how it works. This one took a little bit more time to react, but it still reacted with the water just the same. So I'm just kind of trying to see which kind of technique I want to use for the cover. I'm trying to get my cover to look like aged leather because, like I said, I'm going to make this into a field guide like you would have, if you were observing nature or whatever. So this was a Distress Oxide spray, I believe, I actually think that was ground espresso, and this one was gathered twigs, I believe. And again, just kind of testing for colors and seeing how they react on the different textures and everything. And then I'm going in and just drying it really quickly with my heat tool. When I soaked this Kraft-Tex in the coffee, after I let it soak for like 10 minutes, I pulled it out and I actually ironed it while it was wet. I just put a towel down on my ironing board and ironed it with no steam. And it dried perfectly. It didn't burn. It didn't do this stuff is really, really amazing. And if I remember correctly, you can actually wash it in your washing machine and dry it. And so, and you just get like the best texture. So if you're a texture kind of person, you might really like this product. And it does come in different colors. I got the white, but there is like a craft and a gray and some other colors as well. So what I'm doing here is just kind of seeing, I happen to rub my paper towel over here over this part that I thought was dry, and it was picking up some of the color, and I noticed that it kept doing that. And so I really decided that I just wanted to go in with something that was permanent. I didn't like the fact that I could kind of rub over that and it would pull up some of the distress ink. So in the end, I pulled out another archival ink. This one is in the color coffee, and that's actually what I'm going to use to ink up my cover here. So I started out just kind of on the edges, and then I decided I just wanted to cover the entire thing and just really give it that kind of aged, worn leather look. So I'm going through here, and I'm just going to go all over the cover, and you can see I did on the front and the back part. And then on this one side, what I did is I actually took the ink pad like I'm showing you here, and I just ran it over just to kind of hit the high points of the texture, just to really make it give that worn look. And I'm hoping that as I work through this book, it just gets more like soft and stuff. And so I'm really excited about the way that this cover is. Now, this is going to be a soft cover journal, so if that's not your thing, then you might want to use this maybe in conjunction with some chipboard or something. You could glue it down, certainly, or even sew it to something to give it some more stability. But I'm just going to leave it kind of floppy. So you can see I have my spine here, and my spine is about, I want to say 2 inches or 2¼ inches. I did that so that I could take these 2 traveler's notebooks, and I'm going to make multiple signatures and put them into this book. So I am first starting off with disassembling these. I'm just going to pop the staples out, and then I'm actually going to use the inside papers and the covers in my journal, and I'm just going to make it look like one notebook. So I'm pulling out those staples, and then I'm just going to set these off to the side. I'm going to pull out some of the pattern paper that you can get that coordinates with the kit. And I'm looking for ones that have kind of a multi-directional pattern on them, like these pine cones, so that I can turn them sideways and fold them like this. And then they will be like kind of shorter little signature pages in there. There's this other one that has this kind of mushroom pattern that's kind of going all the different directions. And then I will also do this red pattern that's kind of like the top of a mushroom, and I will use those. And then I'm going to take a couple of the other pages that have a very specific direction to the pattern, and I'm going to do those lengthwise. So I'll have some that are kind of short and narrow, and then some that are just kind of smaller. My intention usually when I work through a journal is I do like a 1 or 2 page spread, but I know for the way that I want to work through the devotional that I'm going to need multiple pages. So this book is really going to look and feel a lot different, I think, than the way that I've done books in the past, and I'm actually really excited about it. I have a bunch of ideas in my brain. I hope that I'm able to get them out onto the paper along with the studies. So here, what you see me doing is I'm just scoring this at about, I think it was like 2.5 inches, just so that I could have a couple pages also that were longer, and it'll have that little skinny narrow side will be part of the signature, but I can always add paper to that if I want to, or create a tuck spot or a pocket or whatever. So I'm just going through and pulling out some more papers. I'm going to do that same thing with some of these patterns where I just have the 4¼ inches for the main part of it, and then I just fold the rest of that, and then that will kind of be the part that goes to the backside of the signature. I don't know if that makes sense, but it just was easier to score that. So I didn't want to get out my scoreboard, so I'm just using my cutting tool and my bone folder. That's one way that you can do that if you don't have a scoring tool. You can use your paper trimmer in that little groove that it's got there. You can just line it up and run a stylus or a bone folder or something down there, and it will score your paper just fine. So you can see here I have the covers of the 2 traveler's notebooks. And I am just kind of trying to decide how I want to do this and how many signatures I want. So I think at this moment that I'm going to use 3 signatures. So I'm going to take these papers. I'm going to have the 2 covers from the traveler's notebook, and I'm going to use those for 2 of the signatures. And then the middle signature is not going to have any paper or anything on the outside. So I'm just going to kind of arrange these papers in these 3 signatures. So you can see I'm just going through here with these, the two Traveler's Notebooks book covers, and just kind of rearranging the papers, trying to make sure there's a good mix of the paper from the Traveler's Notebook and the pattern paper. I love the paper that's in the Traveler's Notebooks. It's really versatile paper. It's really nice, thick weight, and so you can do a lot with it. So I'm just going to add these papers in here, and then in the way that I kind of think that I'm going to want them. In the end, I actually end up changing my mind about how I want to do that. So I'm just putting together this last signature with this pattern paper, just alternating again. I know that I'm going to be adding in a lot of different things, so I'm trying to leave myself a good bit of space. I have a lot of journaling cards that I want to add and a bunch of other things that I'm going to add to this journal, which is why I created the spine so wide, because I know that this is going to get chunky. And as I'm looking through these 3 signatures, I'm afraid that when I add all of the things that I want to add in there, that it's going to it's just not going to do well with all of the layers and things. So what I end up doing is actually turning these into 5 signatures. That way I can just kind of space them out just a little bit better in my journal. So here you can see I have the 3, and I'm just going to kind of test and see how that looks in the spine. I also want to have something that's going to be, help support my spine too, because there's nothing else except just this Kraft-Tex. I'm not using chipboard or anything. So again, I decided to go ahead and do 5 signatures. So I added a few more pieces of pattern paper, and I just kind of alternated how I did them. You can kind of see, I'll do a flip through of one of the signatures later. But so these are my 5 signatures, and I'm just kind of arranging everything. And off camera, I cut a piece of paper to the size of my spine, and I drew out this grid of where I thought tried to make the lines, the spacing for my 5 signatures, and then where I thought the holes were going to go I'm going to use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, just like I normally do. And then when I did that, I realized that my holes were in the wrong place. They were not going to work for those papers that were the smaller ones that had been folded. And so I'm going to kind of redo where my holes are here on my little template that I made. And that's just going to make sure that when I'm punching the holes, I'm getting those papers so that they have at least 2 stitches in them, because if you don't do that, then it's just not very secure. So I'm just moving the holes in just a little bit to make this work a little bit. So I'm just kind of testing that, making sure that that paper is going to hit in a couple different places with the holes. And then I'm going to go through here and just make sure everything is in order and in place. And then I'm going to grab a little paper clip and hold everything in place. Normally I would use my little binder clips that I have, but because these pages are so big, my binder clip isn't going to hold that middle paper in place. And so I'm just using my template again, just making sure I have this little piece of paper in the right spot. And then I'm going to go and just add a little paper clip and just keep everything together the way that I want that. And then I'm going to do that with all 5 of my signatures, and I'm keeping them in order. So I'm trying to make sure to do that because they're a little bit different and everything. And so I'm going to set them off to the side, and I'm going to use my template here. I marked that which was the top. You can see the little T up there, and I'm going to use this now to punch my holes. So I'm going to use a heavy duty awl, and I'm working on a little foam board here that I've used before. It's just like a foam mat. You could use like a mouse pad, or even, I'm working directly on a self-healing mat, or a phone book works really well also. So I'm just going through, and everywhere those lines intersect, I'm punching my holes. This is going to help for when I go through and do the signatures. So now I'm going to use this same template to put the holes for each one of these signatures. So originally I thought I was just going to fold this in half, and it probably could have done that and worked. And I have a little book cradle that's really helpful to do that, but I know not everybody has one of those. But you could do this with just a book that's open, like a big book or like a phone book or whatever. But another way to do that is I'm taking this template and I'm folding it along that first line that I have and lining that up in this first signature. And I'm just going to poke my holes. There's not a lot of paper in each one of these signatures, so I'm able to do this right here on my self-healing mat. I'm just kind of holding everything in place and poking the holes. And then I'm going to just make sure that I'm keeping this in order. I'm going to move down to the second row. I'm going to fold it on that line, and then I'll just tuck that little fold right in the gutter of my signature and poke the holes for this second signature. And then I'm just going to do this for all 5 signatures so that I get the holes lined up exactly with the holes that are punched already in my cover. So it's not always necessary to create a template, it just kind of depends on your personal preference. But from the outside of the journal, I wanted them to look really uniform, and this is the best way to kind of achieve that. And if you're covering up your stitches, then like with fabric or something, then this part's not really necessary. But like I said, I just kept them all in order, and then I'm going to start sewing these in, but I'm going to start sewing them from the back signature. So I flipped them over, so I'm going to start with the last signature. This just makes it so you're not fighting with all of the paper while you are sewing these in. So I'm first cutting my thread. I'm using a waxed linen thread in this color that kind of coordinates with my fabric here. And I'm just going to do the same 3-hole pamphlet stitch that you've probably seen me do on my channel before. So I'm starting in the middle and I'm going to the outside, and then from the outside I'm going to go up to the top and come back in. And this is just a little bit more fiddly because this book is just, it's kind of long and narrow. So I'm having to kind of mess around with this one a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of show you what it looks like when, you know, things don't go exactly as you hoped. There's always a way to fix it. So I just sometimes have to kind of load them through one at a time. So now I'm back on the inside of the signature, going to the outside through that bottom hole. And now I'm going to come in through the middle hole. And if you've watched my channel at all and watched me do this, I always tell you to make sure not to split your threads. And so as I'm doing this, once I get this through back here to the middle, I realize that that's exactly what I have done. And so when you do that, you're not able to tighten down the threads. And so you can see here I have split that thread, and so I'm going to show you how to fix this. So the easiest way to do this is to thread your needle. Just taking the needle off of that thread, and then I'm going to go and pull that thread back out, and it will come right back out because this linen thread is waxed, so it will come right back out. And then I'm just going to rethread my needle and try again. And so I'm just going back now through that middle hole and trying this time not to go and split my threads. And then you can see everything works much easier now. So I'm able to kind of move these threads and tighten them. And I just want to make sure that each tail is on either side of that long piece that's running down the middle. And I'm adjusting it so that I have roughly the same amount on here. Now I have a lot of extra thread on here. The typical rule of thumb for a pamphlet stitch like this is about 2.5 times the length of your spine. I did about 3, and I wanted to have that extra thread because I may want to tie things on or do some things with that. So I just went through and did that same process for all 5 signatures, and I'm just going to do a little flip through here of this first one so you can kind of see what that looks like. Each one is very similar, they just have different papers in there. And so this is what my journal looks like completed. I do want to add a little cover, and I did not turn my camera on for that. So I used this Tim Holtz specimen die and some Nuvo drops in the corners of that, along with some of the fabric from Bythewell4God and the kit sticker that says Twisted Scripture on there. So if you like this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye.